In this lesson, we're going to learn how to use our particle generation system in After Effects to make this waterfall. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and make a new composition. We're going to make it 2000 by 2000 pixels. We'll call it water. And you can leave the duration at whatever it is. We're going to crop it later. So let's just hit OK. Now we're going to go over to Layer, New, and we're going to make a solid. We'll call this Waterfall. And it'll make the composition size, but if not, you can just click make comp size. Color is irrelevant. We'll go back and change that once we've created our particles and hit OK. So we bring this in. You can see by default nothing is happening here. So we're going to go here with our solid selected, go to Effect, Simulation. We'll go to CC Particle World, not CC Particle Systems 2, and we'll create it. It'll create that default particle emitter that we had before. So if you preview through it, you see this orange and yellow shower of sparks. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our emitter and we're going to move it up and over. Now you can either do that by grabbing the emitter in the viewport, which is a little bit more difficult, or you can go here to producer and you can change the position. We'll change the position X to move over, and we'll change the position Y to be up. The next thing we want to do is we want to change the radius of the X to be wider. So it will just zoom in here so you can see the red circle here. This is going to be our emitter. We'll just go ahead and make this 0.2. We'll change the radius Y to be actually a little bit smaller. So we'll change that 0.01 and we'll leave the radius Z unchecked. So the next thing we want to do is we want to go into our physics. And instead of explosive, we are going to use direction axis. Okay, you can see now once we've done that, it's going to shoot it out kind of to the side. And the reason it's doing that is it's shooting out in that direction and the gravity is affecting it. So we can change our velocity to be a little bit less. Let's change our velocity to be 0.5, and now you can see it's streaming out. You can also change the gravity to be a little bit higher. So go ahead and change it to 1. And you can see now that affects direction and the curve of those sparks. So once you've done that, we can change the resistance here. You can give it 0.1 and the resistance, now the particles will kind of fall off just a little bit as they fall down. The next thing we want to add is we want to add a floor. So in our previous example, we just had the particles stay in the center of the screen, but here we want it to reflect off of the ground, kind of indicating that the particles are hitting some type of surface and they're frothing. So we get this blue ground plane, and that's going to be our floor. So we'll leave the floor position as is. We're going to change the floor action to be a bounce. And you'll see once we do that, it automatically bounces off. You can raise the floor up, or you can bring the floor down. And if you preview through it now, you see that those particles are reflecting off of it. Now, they are using 100% of their energy in their reflection. So let's go ahead and change the bounciness to be like 40. Okay, and let's change the bounce speed to be like 15. So now we can go ahead and do that. And you can see that the particles now are staying closer to the bottom of the screen. You can leave all of this directional axis and all of that untouched because we're getting what we want here. Now let's go into our particles. By default, it's a line, and you can change this to any number of these particles, but what I'm going to use is motion polygon. So if you change it to motion polygon, you see you're going to get these. It'll look similar to the lines, but if you zoom in closely, you can see that they're triangles. Motion polygons move in the direction of the particle. So what we need to do is bring their birth size up. So let's just click here and we'll scrub, and you can see the bigger you get, the bigger those motion particles get. So we'll set our birth size to be 2, and we'll set our death size to be 4. And you can see now, as it gets to the bottom, those particles are going to get a little bit bigger. So we'll change that to 3. Let's just see if that looks better. Yeah, it's looking a little bit better. Now, these particles also react to the speed at which they're moving. So if you increase the bounciness of the floor, change this back to 60, you can see those particles are going to thin out a little bit more. So we'll leave this on 40. And we can change the depth size to be even a little bit smaller. So let's just set it to 1 here. Okay, so now you can see that those particles are kind of pooling around the edge. Now, this is a kind of a sparse waterfall, so let's increase our birth rate. Up here at 2, let's just set it to 11, and let's see what that gets us. Yeah, that's getting something a little bit better. And you can even push this up. You can push this to like 18 or 20, and you see the more that you have, the thicker that simulation gets. Now, also the higher the processing power, but usually with these default particles, it won't matter. So you can change this to 25, and you're getting a really good looking waterfall there. Okay, so once you've done that, then we'll go down here to our birth color and our death color. Now, By default, this opacity map here, it's very simple. It's just got a simple gradient that goes from one color to another. If you want a little bit more control, you can open up this custom color map, and that's what we're going to do. So instead of birth to death, we'll set our color map to custom. The color at birth, we're going to change to kind of a light blue. At 25%, we'll change to more of a darker blue, and you can see that's going to be right here in the middle. And then the third color, this 50, is going to be right where our waterfall is kind of falling into the pool at the bottom. So we'll just change this to kind of that darker blue as well. And then here at 75%, we're going to change this to white and make that froth at the bottom more of a foam. And then color at death, we'll just go ahead and change to white as well. So if we play through now, you can see you're getting some of that same movement, and you're getting that white froth in color as the waterfall hits the ground. Now, if you can play around with some of these, you can change the birth rate and the death rate. You can change the opacity if you want the opacity to be a little bit less. You can change that to 50, and you can see now that looks a little bit softer. You can also turn on motion blur, and you can turn on motion blur for the particles, and you'll see that that will change the way that that looks as well. I usually leave that off though, because the particles do a pretty good job of blending in. And I encourage you to play with some of these different particle types too. You can change it to a motion square, and you can see now that the squares are, the particles now are shaped more like squares and less like triangles. You can also change it to 3D shapes. You can change it to faded spheres, and the faded spheres are going to give you more of a soft feel. You have to play around with the birth size and the death size. But if you want to leave it to look the way that it looks in our assignment, we'll change this to back to motion polygon, and we'll play through. That's going to be the completion of the assignment. Good luck. Have fun.